Hello, everyone, and welcome to Podcast Center. Today, we have a really fun and helpful topic for you. We're talking about the habits of successful people, what they do every day to stay focused, happy, and reach their goals. But that's not all.
That's right. While we talk about successful habits, we'll also help you learn and practice some English grammar tips for the elementary level. Don't worry, it'll be simple, easy to understand, and super useful for your daily conversations.
Exactly. We'll talk about things like using the present simple tense, how to ask questions correctly, and some helpful vocabulary about daily routines. So not only will you learn about success, but you'll also improve your English skills.
And don't forget, learning English is also a successful habit. Listening to podcasts like this is already a great step towards your goals. So, are you ready? Let's get started and make learning fun?
All right, let's dive into the habits of successful people and learn some English along the way. Stay tuned. So, Marco, let's start with the first habit of successful people. What do you think is something they always do every day?
I'd say they wake up early. Many successful people start their day early because it gives them more time to plan and work on their goals.
That's so true. Waking up early can make a big difference. Now, for our English learners, here's a grammar tip. When we talk about daily habits, we use the present simple tense. For example, I wake up at 6 a.m. or she wakes up early. See how we add in S for she or he.
Great tip, Katharina. And here's a simple question for practice. What time do you wake up? Listeners, try to answer this question using the present simple tense.
Exactly. Okay, let's move to another habit. Successful people also plan their day. They make a list of things to do. Marco, how do you plan your day?
I usually write down my tasks in a notebook. For example, I write, finish my work, exercise, or read a book. Planning helps me stay organized.
That's a great habit. And here's a new grammar tip. When we talk about things we do regularly, we use adverbs like always, usually, often, or sometimes. For example, I always plan my day, or I sometimes forget to plan. Try to use these words when talking about your daily habits.
Good one, Katharina. Now, another habit is reading. Successful people love to read because it helps them learn new things. What about you, Katharina? What do you like to read?
I love reading books about self-improvement. For example, I'm reading a book called Atomic Habits right now. It's all about building good habits and breaking bad ones.
Oh, I've heard about that book, and for our listeners, here's a new word, habit. A habit is something you do again and again, like brushing your teeth or reading every day. Katharina, can you give another example of a habit?
Sure, a good habit is drinking water in the morning. I always drink a glass of water when I wake up. What about you, Marco?
Same here. It's such an easy habit, but it makes you feel good. For our listeners, try to use this sentence. I always in the morning. Fill in the blank with one of your habits.
Perfect practice. Let's talk about one more habit, exercise. Successful people always find time to stay active, even if they're busy. Marco, do you exercise every day?
Not every day, but I try to exercise often. I like walking or doing simple stretches. Exercise gives me energy to work better. How about you?
I love yoga. It's relaxing and helps me focus. And for our listeners, here's a question. What do you do to stay active? Try to answer using the present simple tense, like I walk, I run, or I dance.
Great practice, everyone. And don't forget, building small habits like these can make a big difference in your life. Just like learning English, practice a little every day, and you'll improve step by step.
Another habit of successful people is staying positive. They always try to see the good side of things, even when life is hard. Marco, how do you stay positive?
Good question. I focus on things I'm grateful for. For example, I think about my family, my friends, or my health. What about you, Katharina?
That's a great habit. I like to write in a journal. Every night, I write 3 good things that happened during the day. It helps me end the day with happy thoughts.
That's a cool idea. And here's something for our listeners. When you talk about things you're grateful for, use the phrase, I'm thankful for. For example, I'm thankful for my home, or I'm thankful for my teacher. What are you thankful for, listeners?
Good practice. Marco, let's talk about another habit, learning new skills. Successful people never stop learning. Marco, what's a new skill you're learning?
Right now, I'm learning how to cook better. I'm trying to make healthy meals at home. It's fun and it saves money too. How about you, Katharina?
I'm learning how to paint. It's so relaxing and creative. And listeners, here's a question. What new skill do you want to learn? Try to answer with, I'm learning to, or I want to learn to.
Great practice. Another habit of successful people is helping others. They spend time giving back to their community. Katharina, do you help others in your free time?
Yes, I do. I volunteer at a local animal shelter. I help take care of the dogs and cats there. It's such a nice way to give back. What about you, Marco?
I teach English to kids in my neighborhood. It's a small thing, but it makes me happy to see them learn.
That's amazing, Marco. And for our listeners, here's a phrase you can use, I like to help by. For example, I like to help by cleaning my house, or I like to help by sharing my food. Try it.
Helping others makes the world a better place. And it's just like learning English. When you share what you know, you help others grow, too.
Exactly. And speaking of sharing, let's talk about one last habit for now, taking breaks. Even successful people know they can't work all the time. Marco, how do you take breaks?
I like to go outside for fresh air or take a short walk. It clears my mind and gives me energy to keep going. How about you?
I like to listen to music. It helps me relax and feel happy. And listeners, what do you do during your breaks? Practice saying it in English.
Great question. Remember, taking breaks is not being lazy, it's taking care of yourself. And when you feel good, you can do your best.
Speaking of taking care of yourself, another habit of successful people is eating healthy food. Marco, do you think food affects success?
Definitely. When I eat healthy food, like fruits and vegetables, I feel more focused and energetic. Junk food makes me tired. What about you, Katharina?
I agree. I love starting my day with a healthy breakfast. For example, I eat eggs, toast, and fruit in the morning. It gives me energy for the whole day.
Great idea. And for our listeners, here's a phrase to practice. I like to eat. For example, I like to eat apples, or I like to eat rice. What healthy food do you like to eat?
Yes, tell us in English. Now, let's talk about another habit, staying organized. Successful people always keep their things in order. Marco, how do you stay organized?
I use a planner to write down my tasks. For example, I write, finish my homework or clean my room. It helps me remember everything. How about you?
I organize my workspace. I make sure my desk is clean and my books are in the right place. It makes it easier to focus.
That's a smart habit. For our listeners, practice using the phrase, I organize my. For example, I organize my clothes, or I organize my school bag. What do you organize?
Good practice. Let's move to another habit, staying motivated. Successful people don't give up, even when things are hard. Marco, what keeps you motivated?
I think about my goals. For example, I want to become better at speaking English, so I practice every day. What motivates you, Katharina?
I listen to inspiring stories. When I hear about someone who worked hard and achieved their dream, it gives me hope and energy.
That's a great tip. Listeners, try using the phrase, I stay motivated by. For example, I stay motivated by listening to music, or I stay motivated by reading books. What keeps you going?
These habits are simple, but they can really help you improve your life. And remember, small steps lead to big changes.
Exactly. And just like building habits, learning English takes practice. You're already doing a great job by listening to this podcast.
Another habit we can talk about is setting goals. Successful people always know what they want to achieve. Marco, do you have any goals right now?
Yes, my goal is to improve my English speaking skills. I practice speaking for 10 minutes every day. What about you, Katharina?
That's a great goal. My goal is to read one book in English every month. I think reading helps me learn new words and understand grammar better.
It does. Listeners, try using the phrase "my goal is to." For example, my goal is to learn new words, or my goal is to write better sentences. What's your goal?
Good practice, everyone. Now, let's talk about how successful people stay focused. Marco, how do you avoid distractions when you work or study?
I turn off my phone or put it in another room. That way, I can focus on my tasks without checking messages. How do you stay focused? Katharina.
I like to work in a quiet place. For example, I study at the library or in my room when it's quiet. It helps me concentrate.
Good idea. And for our listeners, here's a new word, distraction. A distraction is something that stops you from focusing. For example, my phone is a distraction. What's your biggest distraction?
That's a great question. Marco, let's move to another habit, being kind. Successful people are kind to others because it helps build good relationships. Marco, how do you show kindness?
I help my friends with their homework or listen to them when they have problems. What about you, Katharina?
I smile and say kind words. For example, I say, "Thank you," or "You're doing a great job." Small things can make someone stay better.
Absolutely. Listeners, try this. Use the phrase "I show kindness by." For example, I show kindness by helping my family, or I show kindness by sharing my things. What do you do to be kind?
Kindness makes the world a better place, and it's also a great way to practice speaking English.
So true, Katharina. Let's talk about one more habit, staying curious. Successful people always ask questions and try to learn more. Katharina, what makes you curious?
I'm curious about how things work. For example, I love learning about technology and how it helps people. What about you, Marco?
I'm curious about different cultures. I like learning about their food, traditions, and ways of life. It's so interesting.
It is. Listeners, here's a question for you. What are you curious about? Try to answer using the phrase, "I'm curious about."
Being curious is like being a lifelong learner. It keeps your mind sharp and makes life more exciting.
Speaking of curiosity, Marco, do you think asking questions is important for learning English?
Yes, absolutely. When I don't understand something, I ask my teacher or a friend. Questions help me learn faster. What about you, Katharina?
I agree. I like to ask, what does this word mean? Or how do I say this in English? It's a great way to improve.
That's true. Listeners, remember to use phrases like, "What does?" "Mean?" or "How do I say?" These are very useful for asking questions. For example, what does success mean? Or how do I say this word correctly?
Good examples, Marco. Another tip, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Successful people aren't perfect, they just keep trying. Marco, do you make mistakes when speaking English?
Oh, all the time. Sometimes I say the wrong word, but that's okay. I learn from my mistakes. What about you, Katharina?
Same here. I remember once I said kitchen when I meant chicken. It was funny, but now I never forget the difference.
That's a great story. Listeners, don't worry about making mistakes. Use the phrase, "It's okay to make mistakes," to remind yourself. For example, it's okay to make mistakes when I speak English.
Exactly. And when you learn from mistakes, you grow stronger. Marco, let's share another habit of successful people managing their time well. How do you manage your time?
I make a to-do list every morning. For example, I write, study English for 30 minutes or do my homework. It helps me stay on track. How about you, Katharina?
I use a timer. For example, I study for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. It's called the Pomodoro technique, and it works really well.
That's smart. Listeners, practice saying, I manage my time by. For example, I manage my time by making a list, or I manage my time by setting a timer. What do you do?
Great question. Managing time is so important, especially when learning a new language. Let's talk about one more habit: staying active. Marco, do you think exercise helps with learning?
Yes, it does. When I exercise, like going for a run or playing football, I feel more energetic and focused. Do you exercise, Katharina?
I do. I love yoga. It helps me relax and feel calm. And when I feel calm, I can focus better on my studies.
That's wonderful. Listeners, here's a tip. Use the phrase I stay active by. For example, I stay active by walking every day, or I stay active by dancing. How do you stay active?
Staying active is not just good for your body, it's good for your mind too. And it makes learning English even more fun.
Wow, Katharina, we covered so much today. From curiosity and asking questions to managing time and staying active, these habits aren't just for successful people, they're great for learning English too.
Absolutely, Marco. And for our listeners, remember, learning English is a journey. Be curious, ask questions, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are stepping stones to success.
Also, make small goals, stay organized, and practice every day. Whether it's speaking, listening, reading, or writing, each small effort adds up to big progress.
And don't forget to have fun while learning. Try to include English in your daily life. Listen to music, watch videos, or even talk to yourself in English. Enjoy the process.
Exactly. The key is consistency and a positive attitude. You've got this, and now we want to hear from you. Share your goals and habits in the comments below. What works for you? We'd love to know.
If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, Podcast Center, so you never miss an episode. Share this with your friends, classmates, or anyone who's learning English.
Yes, because learning together is always more fun. Let's grow this amazing community and keep supporting each other on this journey.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Keep learning, stay curious, and remember, every word you learn brings you closer to your goal.
Until next time, happy learning, everyone. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.